Hi guys, I'm Tammy, and for most of my life I've been pretty addicted to the pursuit of finding purpose. But before I get into my story, I'd really like to get a bit of a sense of the room. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I'd like you to raise your hand if the answer is yes. So how many of you believe that they've found their purpose? Cool. How many of you believe would like to find their purpose? Cool. How many of you feel pressure by this idea of having to find your purpose? All right, not so many, that's good. Cool. So before I get into my story, what I'd really like to also talk about is to begin to remove this pressure of this idea of purpose, right? I feel like today's culture has really shifted the narrative to make us believe that if we don't find our purpose, our life is a bit less meaningful, perhaps, you know? So from a young age, I always remember myself having to find meaning in everything that I did. And every choice had a kind of meaning behind it. So when I look back at my younger years and I think of those moments, you know, when we had to kind of choose our subjects at school at the age of 13, 16 and 18, and we're being told that those subjects are essentially carving out the rest of our lives, while my friends felt a lot of pressure by it, I really didn't. Like, I knew what I liked and I chose what I liked, you know, and I just went with it. I wasn't one of those kids who kind of went into school and knew I wanted to become a doctor at a young age and, you know, did my full pursuit for this. Not at all. I was an anxious kid who was pretty shy and failed a lot academically. But when it came to these choices that other friends felt very pressured by, I really didn't. So I was that annoying friend who always had it figured out for others. So that led me on to going to fashion school. So I left at the age of 18 and I moved to the UK and I started fashion. And I loved it. It was great. Second year came and we had to do work placement. So I moved to London for about a month and I worked with a stylist and was placed with the head stylist, and I was the lowest of the lowest of the lowest intern. There were 3 interns above me, imagine. It was nuts. That film, The Devil Wears Prada, I literally experienced it. It basically sums up, you know, the brutality of the fashion industry. So for the first time in my life, at 20, I know I was young, but before that, I had everything figured out. I suddenly found myself in a place where I was like, you know, the choices that I've made totally are not aligned with the person that I'm becoming. So I went back to uni and I wanted to drop out. But luckily, my tutor introduced me to the world of sustainable fashion. And that was my aha moment. I found a reason behind what I was doing. It's great. And that's when I started to kind of carve out my purpose. I am going to create impact through the fashion industry and change the way that environment and society are being impacted through it. Great. And so everything I did after that moment was on the pursuit of achieving this purpose. So after I graduated, I got to do some traveling. So everything I did, you know, from my traveling choices, my relocation, my studying, my jobs, everything was in the pursuit of this purpose. And I traveled to India, I went to visit loads of factories, started to see the other side of the fashion industry, got even more obsessed, ended up working in Bali with sustainable fashion brands, London, Berlin, ended up doing my master's in sustainable fashion in Berlin. I was literally obsessed. And the more I did it, the more excited I got by this idea of achieving my purpose and being a part of that change. And so after I graduated, I spent about 5 years, you know, on this mostly academic kind of journey, immersing myself into the world of sustainable fashion. And after I finished my master's, I was like, okay, I'm ready to find that job. I'm ready to start achieving my purpose and creating real impact. And so I wanted to stay in Berlin. I got another job to keep me afloat, and I started seeking for this job. It didn't happen. rejection after rejection after rejection. And if anyone's ever gone through that process of applying for a job and it's just not happening, it can be so depleting. And it was pulling me away from this thing that I was born to do and that I told myself I was born to do. In the meantime, while all of that rejection was happening, there was some other stuff happening on the side. I had already started kind of making a connection to sustainable fashion and myself in Malta. So while I was living in Berlin, I had people reach out to me just for me to start supporting them in creating and ideating and launching their dream brand that represented their purpose and sustainability within it. So I just took it. It was taking me away from this thing that I told myself I was born to do, but I couldn't take away it. I couldn't refuse this opportunity. And so I went with it. I threw myself in the deep end, started working on an individual level with entrepreneurs, small business owners, on a very interpersonal level, helping them to find their own purpose and understanding how that purpose is going to reflect into their business. It was great. I was loving it. And the best thing, I was actually really good at it. So then I started looking back at my purpose and saying, okay, this thing that I told myself that I was born to do, is it actually that? And it started to change. And because I was being really lit up by the work that I was doing, the change kind of happened organically. And I didn't really feel attached to that one thing I was born to do. And so it was great. And that's what I've been doing for the last 8 years with Cozy Studio. And it's been great. 5 years after I started this, so about 3 years ago, I started working on 2 other side projects with one of them called Kurzita Collective, with 3 lifelong friends, where our mission is to activate agency in citizens in Malta so that we can start redesigning a better Malta together. And the second is Frank Portelli Archives, where I'm helping my mom and her family to make my grandfather's archive, artistic archive, more accessible to the public. This is where existential crisis happened. All of a sudden, 2 side projects are making me feel more alive than ever before. And the catch, I wasn't getting paid. It was all for free. So, this was my existential moment. And that's when I started to think. That's when I started to reflect and to understand, why am I so obsessed with this idea of having this one thing that I was born to do? So that's when I started to understand that purpose isn't this one tangible thing that we define and we work towards. Purpose exists in meaning, and meaning can exist in everything. I loved it because I put meaning into it, and it gave me meaning back. So purpose exists in meaning, and meaning can exist in everything. So if there's one thing that I take from my experience with purpose, is to stop seeking for this one thing that I'm defining as my purpose, and instead start to find meaning in all the things that I'm actually already engaging in, whether that's time with my family, time with my friends, my work, the people that I'm engaging with just on the street, because purpose exists in meaning, and meaning can be in everything. Just to finish that off, about a month ago, I got offered a dream job with a sustainable architecture firm that is potentially closing the doors on my self-employment life that I imagined myself in being forever. And the great thing about it is that if I was so attached to that idea of what I was born to do, I would have never created space for other opportunities that are going to allow me to reach different levels and heights of my own purpose. So if there's any advice I can give, it's definitely don't go seeking purpose. Find meaning in all the things that you do, and purpose will find you. So thank you. Thank you.